So it is time for my summer 2022 LCS power rankings. These are typically a power ranking in the sense that I try to say where I think they will end in the summer split regular season. I'm going to do that again, but this time I'm going to throw some extra caveats because I think some things early in the season will greatly affect the actual playoffs, and so I'll cover that as I go through the teams where it's relevant. Otherwise, it's still mostly the same power rankings that I always do. So without any further ado, we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. Let's kick it off with 10th place. Unfortunately, number 10 for me is going to be CLG. I feel horrible saying this because I'm actually a huge fan of this team, and I was one of the people in spring predicting them as a potential dark horse to break into playoffs as a top 6 team. Unfortunately, the low side of what I was hoping to see came true. For them to be that dark horse, I wanted to see the EG kind of contracts. I wanted to see Jenkins being able to play weak side effectively, kind of like we saw on Team Liquid. Their bot lane to kind of become a force, and Palafox to be able to roam all over the map. Unfortunately, what we got was an inconsistent contract. It looked more like his Golden Guardian days and his C9 or EG. Jenkins did not adapt to not playing on a top team. The bot lane had the firepower, but was largely too inconsistent to be 100% relied upon, and Palafox was more often than not forgettable in the mid lane. And my concern is that moving into next split, when I start talking about some of the other teams, the change to Dokla in the top lane, I think, will stabilize some of the big issues potentially that they were having top lane, but I don't think Dokla himself will end up giving this team extra carry threats. And it'll still mostly be, did our bot lane play well enough, and did the rest of the team support the bot lane enough to carry? And I don't see them getting many wins outside of that one win con. And that was something that they were already struggling with last split. I expect most of those struggles to continue, even if Dokla does prove to be an individually better piece for them. The other people around them, I feel like, made bigger splashes to leapfrog them in the standings because they were only one game ahead of 10th place last split. They had one more win than TSM and Immortals, and I think both those two teams made bigger moves. That brings me to number 9, Immortals. I was just talking about the bigger moves that they made. I think bringing in Kenvi is great. Ignar and Lost, sure. I think Lost got too much flack from the TSM people from his time on that team. He was serviceable, and I think if there's other threats around him, then he can kind of not be relied upon to be a major carry. I think he's not shown enough to be like the guy in team fights the way a number of other AD carries in North America can be. But I think Ignar's a great addition just in terms of overall playmaking and vision for the game. He always wants to find flanks, opportunities that'll help their team fighting. PoE and Revenge, I'm still a little disappointed in them from Spring Split. I wanted more out of them. We didn't really get it, and I think they can provide more. And then the big X factor for this whole thing is Kenvi. He's someone who's very hyped up coming in from the academy scene, and for good reason. But there's always a concern about rookies debuting on bottom teams, which is what Immortals was. Now, like I said, there was a huge change in the bot lane. And so maybe those things will make this more of a mid-level team, and then Kenvi can have a good debut. But I'm concerned that he debuts on a struggling team, and I'm not sure that they can reach the heights that this team is capable of if they'll hit the potential. If this team hits the peaks for multiple players, they can easily break into the top half of the league, because I think the bottom half is largely pretty open. But I will say that I don't believe that will happen because some problems with the organization itself. They've cycled through tons of GMs, apparently. There was some weird messaging if you were on their subreddit and was around for some of the AMAs. There's just been some weird stuff around them that I don't think that this is going to be the environment for a lot of these players to return to peak form or come out the gates hot for someone like Kenvi. So just overall, for those reasons, I'm still kind of doubting this team, though I do think they'll be better than they were in spring. Before going to my next team, one thing I wanted to say was just the bottom 6 in the league, like I said, feels like a crapshoot, and I think that applies to everyone. I think the top 4 is pretty set, and even my order of the top 4, I'm going to feel pretty confident in once I get up there. But outside of that top 4, like, anything could happen, and I probably wouldn't be that surprised. Next up for me is Golden Guardians at 8, slipping a little bit from their spring performance. Licorice, Pride Stalker, Blazeola, Stixay being the change coming in for Lost and Ole. Lost last split got a lot of criticism for being overly safe, not going in, not being able to carry in some of these late game fights, but I think there was a regression even for Blazeola after what I thought was a great summer split last year. He didn't look like the kind of borderline top 3-ish mid that I was hoping he would kind of become in a week or mid-season that they had in spring. Didn't really develop there. Their bot lane was okay, hit or miss, and then Licorice, I thought, was decent, but made some mistakes. I think that was a Blazeola as well. They would like get caught out with high isolated deaths, making mistakes. And Pride Stalker has a very niche play style. And I've also heard things about this team that makes it sound like it wasn't all sunflowers and rainbows last split. Like they were just like keeping their head down. Like for CLG, I heard more or less those guys got along pretty well, and they were all happy, and like no one was really like trying to dunk on anyone. It seemed like they were understanding that they're developing, and that's what they're still going to be doing here. But for Golden Guardians, I think there were some potential concerns about how they wanted to change their roster, and I don't know if all those things happened. So this to me just feels kind of like, I mean, I'm just not sold on this team. But they're still making playoffs according to this power ranking, so there you go. Also, it's just my duty to universally doubt Golden Guardians, and I know that if a Nero watches this and I had them anywhere in the top half of the rankings, it would just throw them off. So I have to put them close to the bottom to, you know, do my duty as the doubting content creator. Coming up next is TSM number 7. The epitome of my uncertainty around the bottom 6 team is TSM coming in at number 7. This team could go literally anywhere there, and I would not be shocked. There's no team I'm less certain of than this team. Basically, what they did was they brought in Maple, the longtime veteran from overseas, to come stabilize the mid lane. And my thoughts on the team are basically this. Maple is a historic mid laner. He kind of burned out of the LPL a couple times, but I think the LPL's meta and play style is the kind of thing that could push someone who's starting to fall behind in mechanics maybe, but if they still have good veteran leadership, I don't think North America is the kind of region that's going to skill check you all over the place like the LPL will. I think someone like Maple will not be challenged too much, even in the North American mid lane. Like Bjerg and Jensen, who are among the top mid laners in North America, are not really the like, I'm gonna hard style on you in lane player that they might have been in days old. So I don't think the weaknesses that he's bringing are as much of a concern. The thing I'm more concerned about is, can he communicate with the team? I mean, him and Shenyi and Spica can kind of speak together, but is Spica going to be on translator duty? Is Maple's English good enough to not need to go through Spica? And then there's just all the other organizational concerns that plagued this team in spring that could just easily be there. That said, if all those issues kind of go away or they're not that significant, Huni, Spica, and Tactical, I think, bring enough firepower for Maple to find a more facilitator role and focus more on either getting one of the side laners ahead, working with Spica potentially, and just making things happen. I can see a world where that works. And so that's why I think Parth's prediction about them being in the top 5 of the league is not outrageous, but I could also see this whole roster just catching on fire again and ending up like 9th, 10th again, which would not shock me either, because this is mostly the same roster with Maple thrown in there. Maybe he is just a total dumpster fire in mid lane on a skill level, you know, like who really knows? And this team is just like, I don't know what to make of you. Number 6 is Dignitas, and I guess you would say this is the team that I'm kind of feeling a little bit. I don't know how other people are feeling about this team. But I think the swap from Gamsu to Fake God is a decent idea here. For people who aren't following, Gamsu I don't think was setting the academy scene on fire from 100 Thieves last split, but he's a good team player. He can understand his role on the team, and I think not like Fake God single-handedly cost them tons of games, but I think just shoring up what that role in the top side is going to be, make it a little less of a black hole than it was, can help a lot. I'm still super hot on River. I think he's really good. I think Bio and Neo are not bad. Blue, I'm not in love with him. I think he's okay. And I still think that this team is kind of similar to what I wanted CLG to be in spring, where you have this really good jungler, a pretty good bot lane, a mid laner who can facilitate, and a top lane that's going to know their role. I think this team can do that more. I am a little concerned because the teams that Dignitas beat in spring, it was like they would just lose to literally everyone but the worst teams in the league, but could kind of randomly beat 100 Thieves as well. I'm expecting that to balance out a little bit more. They'll beat a couple more teams around them in the standings with this lineup, but also still probably struggle a little bit than the teams in the top half of the league. FLYQUEST is my number 5, and I'll be honest, I don't really know what to think of this team, because I was on the train that thought FLYQUEST was kind of fraudulent the entire split. They started out really hot. We're using the roaming Lulu top Janna strategy and got some early wins there. And then when other teams were struggling, they were making some plays. And I was like, all right, you're not that bad. They started dropping a little bit towards the end of the split, and then they got kind of destroyed by EG, and I was ready to be like, yep, this team is more like a 6th, 7th place team that overperformed a little bit in spring. But then EG won the championship without dropping a game to anyone else, and the last team to beat them was FLYQUEST. And Now I'm not sure what to think. I can see why this team can win. Their bot lane is decent. Afro knows how to get his 80 carries ahead. Jose had his best split by far in North America in spring last year, and there's no reason to think that won't continue. Decoy was a decent surprise, borderline in the top 3 All-Pro. I think he actually won. I didn't personally vote for him, but he was amongst the better performing mids in North America. I think he'll be more contested a little bit with Maple coming in, as well as Jensen's return. But it's still something that he could end up as one of the top mid laners in the league. And then Kumo is maybe the weakest part individually of this roster, but I do think he's someone who knows what the team needs in a given moment. And while I want to see him step up individually a little bit, I think his ability to play a role for the team or occasionally even be the carry does work sometimes. So this is a team that I'm still like, are you frauds? But I just don't have enough evidence to doubt their spring performance, I guess. Like, I want to doubt I don't know why I do. I just don't really believe their spring performance, but if I don't have a good reason really to. All right, here we go. Top half of the league teams. This is where I start feeling a little bit more confident in my placings. Coming in for number 4 for me is Cloud9. So this team has Fudge going back to top lane, Blabber, Jensen coming off after a split in retirement, just basically training, Berserker still starting in bot lane, and Sven role swapping to support. And so on paper, there's a lot of reasons that this team should struggle. The role swap, you have Jensen unretiring, I know he never really retired, but Fudge going back top lane, like those are all reasons that this team should have a slow start, combined with the fact that we are hearing that there's visa issues for Berserker. We'll see if he's the only one who has problems, as well as like now Sven is not he's gonna have to learn the role with someone else potentially. Like, who knows how that's gonna go. I have heard that supposedly Sven is acclimating quite well to the position, and it doesn't surprise me. Though I think support is one that is a bit of a stage role. Like, you need to know when to go in. Like, you're going to be Alistar, you're going to be Leona, you're going to be Nautilus. Your team's going to be playing footsies at Dragon or Baron with someone, and you're going to need the go switch. And that's something that we'll have to see if he can translate that onto stage. But I think Sven has the right kind of mentality. He's an aggressive player. And so I can see him being good at this swap. We'll have to see. But the reason I prefaced this video with wanting to make a couple other predictions is because while I think C9 will get 4th in the regular season for visa issues, slow start, role swaps, all this stuff, I do think that the only real question mark for me actually about this team is Sven. I think Fudge will go back top lane fine. I think Blabber is still a beast domestically, and even internationally, I think he's decent. Jensen is really good, and I don't think will take as much time to get up to speed. I think Berserker's a monster. If you had to tell me one of the two was going to leave North America, Berserker or Summit, I actually would have picked Berserker to stay. So I'm happy he's still here, just with how young he is and how good he is and how high up his ceiling can go. Like, I'm really hot on him. And if Sven becomes even a top 6 support in the league, I think this team has a real shot at Worlds. Not just for their own talent, but also because I'm not convinced one of the 3 teams above them won't suffer some sort of collapse in some capacity. Maybe it's not even a full collapse, but just like an underperformance due to their own standards that all 3 of these teams have set from spring split and before. That brings me to my number 3 team, which is EG. I think they're gonna get hit with that MSI hangover a little bit. I think they'll be slow to start. This is also a team that is not really, as far as we can tell, data-wise, a huge best-of-1 team during a regular season. I think they're more than happy to experiment, drop some games, mess around with the new meta, maybe take things a little slow so they don't get burned out towards the end of the season. You know, it's really tough when you go to MSI. You have to keep practicing on this old patch while everyone's training on the new one. Then you come back and you haven't had any time off and you acclimate. Everyone else is coming fresh off a break, basically. So I think the MSI hangover will hit them, give them a slow start, and so they'll finish 3rd in the regular season, but be title threats again by the end of the split. So I'm not super concerned about them. I could see them. I think they'll make Worlds. This is not one of the teams I'm concerned about collapsing. They just seem to have like a stronger than normal mental in some sense. Like, they are so chill. They didn't really collapse at all, it felt like, at MSI, when a lot of teams in North America struggle against the competition that should be below them because it feels like nerves get to them. I have not seen EG get nervous yet, it feels like. I don't think there's really any of that element to them, and so that's why I think I don't see the team like turning on each other and kabooming or anything like that. Impact inspired JoJo, Danny, Vulcan. I'm big believers in them after spring split. I was already turning, you know, like I was one of the people predicting EG during the run. I did not predict them in the finals, but I predicted the number of their upsets. So I'm still hot on this team, and I just don't think that they're, even if they have a slow start, like they could finish 4th or even 5th for me, and I would still feel pretty good about them probably making Worlds. This brings me to my number 1 and number 2 team. We'll do these as a group, and first we'll talk about the regular season placement and then some of the potential Worlds concerns. So coming in at number 2, I have 100 Thieves, Someday Closer, Abadaga, FBI, and Huhi. And number 1, Team Liquid, Bwipo, Santorum, Bjerg, Hans, and Core. Team Liquid is just so stacked on talent, and I feel like they're super professional. You know, they want to go out there, they want to win games, even if they're willing to experiment in the draft and stuff. Like, they're just seem like the kind of team that's not going to be slow to start. They're not really going to struggle. Even in spring, they won lock-in. They were 1-2 in the standings pretty much the entire way through with Cloud9. Then Cloud9 dropped. Other teams kind of caught up to them a little bit, but like they just are so consistent that I think they will finish first again. Bwipo, Santorum, Bjerg, Hans, Core. Again, like there's just so many threats on this team. So many people can carry. I'm sure Bjerg will continue ramping up, and I hope he does, because this team has not won in 3 years. Or JJ hasn't won without Doublelift. You know, like I think there's a lot of chips on their shoulder, and you know I'm definitely gonna hype up that pressure, I guess, that they should be feeling. But I am concerned based off spring's ending and the reverse sweep at 100 Thieves hands and the, you know, sweep by EG, that this is a team that it's a super team. It's really consistent, but it doesn't seem to hit that next gear that a team with this much talent should be able to. It doesn't remind me of Super Team G2 when they were hitting their heights or something, you know, like this feels like one of those super teams, which is less than the sum of its parts a little bit. So while I think that will guarantee them first place in the actual regular season, come playoff time in the Worlds push, I could see a situation where a tough early matchup in the top half of the bracket sends this team reeling. They lose in the lower bracket to EG or C9 or 100 Thieves, who grab that last spot and then knock TL out of Worlds. That same logic largely applies to 100 Thieves as well. This team was struggling a fair amount during the regular season before ripping off a huge win streak towards the end. But even in that win streak, they probably should have dropped some of those games. It wasn't like, we're just better now. It was, I think, a couple coin flips that ended up tails against them in their slower start started turning up heads, but it's still not like super clean wins. I still have concerns about this team's consistency. It's kind of the opposite problem of TL, where, okay, can you get to the next gear? I don't know. This is, I've seen your next gear, but are you going to hit it? Because it looked like they were going to get swept by Team Liquid before they finally started playing well. And then that version showed up for finals where they just got absolutely shit on by EG. And as much as I love EG, I don't think that they should be 3-0ing 100 Thieves in the finals without 100 Thieves pulling their own weight in that loss. You know, like they're contributing to the loss just as much as EG's dominance was. And so 100 Thieves to me feels like this team that just might not show up on any given day. And I feel like, well, Closer has the killer mentality, and Someday was really consistent in that split. Bot lane and mid, you never knew what you were going to get. And those two positions really need to step up for me. I still think there's enough talent in this lineup to get second place, because EG and C9, I'm predicting, have slow starts. I feel like if EG or C9 was coming in at 100%, I might bump 100 Thieves down a little lower in the regular season standings. I guess 100 Thieves fans might think I'm a hater. I'm still putting them number 2 in the season, and I can still see them making Worlds. It's just the same concern I have about TL, because both these teams, even though they were in the finals weekend, I think you could see that they both can get rocked. They both might have a little bit of a glass jaw, where when things start going poorly for them, like they just don't get back into it fast enough before the series is over. And if you have a bad series in that lower bracket going into Worlds, like you could get knocked out. I would say EG is the one team I'm really confident in making Worlds, but TL, 100 Thieves, and C9, like any one of those could be the odd man out, I think. That's my prediction for the playoffs. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm sure that will change drastically by the time we get there, and we can look back at this and laugh at me then. But I do feel good about their placing in the regular season, at least. I'm pretty confident in TL number 1, 100 Thieves number 2, EG number 3, and C9 number 4. That's going to do it for the video. Let me know where you agree, disagree, think I got it right, being too harsh on a team. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that jazz. Tweet at me. I don't really care. I'll see you guys next time for Blame Game, which should be coming out a little bit later this week. I have no idea what the topic's going to be, so maybe you can even suggest some stuff for me. I don't know.
Thanks so much for watching that interview. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Alienware. you're looking at this right now and you're like, wow, Travis's camera sure is nice. You know, we've got the sun coming in and all that stuff. No, you're not watching it on an Alienware 34-inch OLED. And so you got to get one of those things. It is beautiful. You would see this thing. It would just, the HD, it's amazing. So please check out Alienware. You can check the link in the description below. And be sure to look at their new 34-inch OLED. It is fantastic. I love mine.